I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the A3 members of the Security Council, namely the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Liberia, and my own country, Somalia. We thank the Presidency for promptly convening this emergency meeting on the situation in the Middle East. The A3 thanks the Secretary General for his thorough update on this worrying and rapidly evolving development in the Middle East and its implications on international peace and security. We also echo the Secretary General's message of today's military escalation in the Middle East. We welcome the representative of Iran to this meeting. Mr. President, the A3 aligns itself with the statement of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, on the U.S.-Iran military escalation issued on February 28th of 2026. The reported military strikes carried out by the United States in coordination with their Israeli forces against targets inside the Islamic Republic of Iran and Iran's subsequent response represents a perilous and deeply troubling escalation, one that marks a serious intensification of hostilities in the Middle East and threatens to engulf the entire region in an uncontrollable cycle of violence, suffering, and pain. The A3 condemns the missiles and drone attacks carried out by Iran against the sovereign territories of Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. The A3 reiterates that all member states must respect their obligations under international law, including the Charter, which prohibits the threat of the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. These actions risk further destabilizing the Middle East and underscore the urgent imperative to safeguard broader peace and internal stability, particularly as the geographic scope of military activity expands beyond the initial parties to the conflict. The A3 remains steadfast in its commitment to the fundamental principles of international law and the Charter of the United Nations. At the same time, the A3 recognizes the concerns of all states in the region, which must be addressed through dialogue and peaceful means in accordance with international law and the UN Charter. We believe that all member states share a responsibility to act in accordance with these commitments, and that these are essential foundations for international cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Mr. President, the A3 calls for restraint, urgent de-escalation, and sustained dialogue. All parties must act fully in accordance with international law and the United Nations Charter to safeguard international peace and security. Our position underscores the importance of dialogue, the peaceful settlement of disputes, and respect of international law. It's important for all parties to exercise restraint and responsibility, uphold international law, and avoid any actions that could escalate tensions or threaten regional peace and stability. The A3 stresses that the spillover effects of these hostilities imperil countless lives and threaten to deepen existing crises. The A3 expresses its solidarity with the people of the region and reiterates that the African Union's commitment to peace, stability, and mutual respect among nations and regions. Mr. President, in this regard, the A3 urges all parties to prioritize diplomatic engagements, including the ongoing international mediation efforts facilitated by the Sultanate of Oman to prevent further deterioration and uphold international rules-based order. At this critical juncture, The A3 calls for the swift return to the path of negotiations as the only viable means to reach a sustainable agreement regarding the Iranian nuclear program. Sustainable peace can only be achieved through diplomacy, not through force. The A3 strongly reaffirms the urgent necessity of establishing a Middle East zone free of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction, applicable to all states in the region without exception, in accordance with relevant international resolutions. We also stress the need for all Middle Eastern countries to join the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons as a step toward regional and global security. We emphasize the paramount importance of protecting civilians and civilian infrastructure, including in the context of cross-border strikes and retaliatory actions, and as well as refraining from targeting nuclear facilities that are under International Atomic Energy Agency safeguards, in line with relevant IAEA resolutions and the United Nations Security Council decisions. The A3 reaffirms its commitment to multilateralism and the principles of the United Nations Charter. We urge all parties to act with responsibility and wisdom, placing the well-being of the region's people above all other considerations. It's important to seize this moment to redouble our efforts for de-escalation and to support a diplomatic process that can deliver peace, stability, and security for all states in the Middle East. The A3 stands ready to support all efforts within this Council and in cooperation with regional and international partners to facilitate a peaceful, inclusive, and lasting resolution to the situation in the Middle East. I thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will speak directly to three areas today: the principles, the facts, and the way out. First, the principles. The UN Charter provides the foundation for the maintenance of international peace and security. Article 2 of the Charter clearly states, all members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. International law and international humanitarian law must always be respected. That is why, since this morning, I have condemned the massive military strikes by the United States and Israel against Iran. And I also condemned the subsequent attacks by Iran, violating the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. We are witnessing a grave threat to international peace and security. Military action carries the risk of igniting a chain of events that no one can control in the most volatile region of the world. Let me be clear, there is no viable alternative to the peaceful settlement of international disputes. Lasting peace can only be achieved through peaceful means, including genuine dialogue and negotiations. Mr. President, second, the facts. The situation on the ground is very fluid. There are many unconfirmed reports. Here is what we know. About 20 cities across Iran, including Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, Shahryar, and Tabriz, have reportedly been attacked. In Tehran, large explosions were reported in the district that includes the presidential palace and the compound of the supreme leader. Several high-ranking officials have reportedly been killed, including, according to Israeli sources, Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei, that I'm not in a position to confirm. Iran's airspace has been closed and the country is under a near-total internet blackout. The attacks have reportedly caused significant civilian casualties. According to Iranian media, an airstrike killed at least 85 people and injured many more at a girls' school in Minab, Hormozgan province, and the school in Tehran was also reportedly hit, causing 2 deaths. Mr. President, military action is expanding rapidly across the region, creating an increasingly volatile and unpredictable situation and heightening the risk of miscalculation. According to Israeli sources, 89 people have been injured in Iran's subsequent strikes on Israel, and there were also impacts in the occupied West Bank. Iran has announced that in reaction to US and Israeli airstrikes, it targeted US military assets in the region. These strikes have reportedly hit civilian areas and infrastructure in the countries that I have already mentioned. Indirect impact of falling debris was also reported in Lebanon and Syria. Most Gulf states successfully intercepted the Iranian strikes. However, the UAE reported that 1 civilian was killed by debris from an intercepted missile. In Iraq, there are reports of drone and missile attacks from both sides. There are also reports that Iran is closing the Strait of Hormuz for international shipping. Mr. President, the US and Israel attacks occurred following the 3rd round of indirect talks between the US and Iran mediated by Oman. Preparations had been made for technical talks in Vienna next week, followed by a new round of political talks. I deeply regret that this opportunity of diplomacy has been squandered. Mr. President, third, the region and the world need a way out now. I call for de-escalation and an immediate cessation of hostilities. The alternative is a potential wider conflict with grave consequences for civilians and regional stability. I strongly urge all parties to return immediately to the negotiating table, notably on the Iran nuclear program. I note that the US President has reportedly talked with leaders of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Iran's foreign minister has reportedly spoken to his counterparts in GCC countries and Iraq, and everything must be done to prevent a further escalation. To this end, I call on all member states to strictly uphold their obligations under international law, including the UN Charter, to respect and protect civilians in accordance with international humanitarian law, and to ensure nuclear safety. Let us act responsibly and together to pull the region and our world back from the brink.